Let's start off. Who here codes in JavaScript at all? Awesome. Who here codes in some higher form of JavaScript, like TypeScript or CoffeeScript or anything like that? All right, cool. Elm? ClojureScript? Any? No? Okay. All right, well, today I'm going to be talking to you about ES 2015, or as I like to call it, CoffeeScript, the good parts. I'm a software engineer at Boomtown. We do like real estate, web platform stuff. We're located north of the crosstown. It's been pretty cool. I work on a CRM, which seems to be what everybody does nowadays, is some sort of CRM or another. And I love JavaScript. I write in it every day. I want to bring it to the server. I want to bring it to mobile with React Native. I just want to write JavaScript everywhere. Some of you, if you know any recruiters, they may know it as Java. If you like Twitter, you can reach me here. I talk about JavaScript all the time, and cats, and cookies, and various things. Today I'm going to talk to you about ES Harmony. Wait, not ES Harmony. I'm going to talk to you about ES6. ES 2015. All right, today I'm going to talk to you about ES 2015. What does the ES stand for in ES 2015? ECMAScript, or European Computer Manufacturers Association script, if brevity is not your thing. It's a language specification. JavaScript's just one implementation of it. If you've used ActionScript in Flash, that's another implementation. I'm just going to talk about the uses in JavaScript today. I'll shorten it to ES 2015 for you and not say European Computer Manufacturers Association script every time. It's governed by TC 39. I don't know who the first 38 technical communities are, but 39 is definitely the best. They meet a lot. They talk about new features they want to bring in. So why did the name change from ES6 to ES 2015? Annual releases. They wanted to get the browser makers' butts in gear because ES6 took so long to get together and browser makers were just moving so slow. So that means next year there's going to be ES 2016. But today I'm talking about ES 2015. ES 2015 is huge. I don't have a picture, but I saw on Twitter the other week someone bound and print the ES6 and ES 2015 spec. It's about this thick, big old book. You could use it to like whack someone with. I'm not sure. It actually has beginnings way back in 2008. Kind of like there's some first rumblings about it. First drafts came out in 2011. So it's really been in the workings for a really long time. I said it's big. I'm only going to go over a few things today, particularly my favorite things about this. I think if you've used any other language, you'll see that there are some really obvious advancements with ES 2015. Here's the 8 that I'm going to talk to you about today. Let and const, which are just new ways to declare your variables. Some changes in functions with JavaScript, some changes in objects with JavaScript. Destructuring, which is a new way to kind of peel off things from your variables. Rest and spread, which is just, I'll talk about it when I get to it. It's kind of funky. Classes, if that's your thing. String templates, and then modules, which if you aren't coding JavaScript with modules, you probably should be. All right, first up, let and const. Let and const are a new way to declare your variables, and they deal with scope. What do I mean when I say scope? I mean the time period for which your variable exists, just kind of like where your variable exists. If I declare A over here in one function and I try to access it in another function, you're not going to get it. So with var, if you use, it seems like a lot of people use JavaScript in here today, you probably write with var. It has function scoping, which means that the variable exists for the lifetime of the function. If you declare it in an if statement, it's actually available before that if statement, which leads to bugs. When you use var, your variable gets hoisted to the top, which means, again, if you declare an if, it's available before the if, it's going to be undefined. It's kind of funky. Some people are like, well, I'll use the variable up there because it exists, which leads to really messy code. Let and const have block scoping. Block scoping means if you see a curly brace, that's probably a new block. An if statement starts a new block, so I could have variable A in both the if and the else declared separately, and they wouldn't touch each other. You could do it in a while loop, a for loop. Switches are a little weird. You have to add curly braces to switches to do it, but you can. So it's just kind of a way to reuse variables, because I've seen I in a for loop every time. Someone doesn't reset I maybe in the next loop, and then they have a bug because of that with var. Well, with let and const, you get a new variable each time you use it in a different block. I usually default everything in my code to const. I use lit maybe 10% of the time. Const is pretty cool because it creates a contract to say that this variable will not be reassigned anywhere else, which is great when you're like not familiar with code. I'll come into a code and I'll look and find the lets because I know those are the things that are changing over time, and the constant's just not. It makes it really clear to kind of check out what's going on. I don't really have anything more in let and const. It's just I've defaulted everything to const. If I know something's going to change, I move it to let. I can talk about it a little bit more in questions if you have any more about it, but just use let and const. Up next, I'm going to talk about functions in JavaScript, which is all of my code in JavaScript is a function, pretty much. It's just functions calling other functions, calling other functions. There's a new shorthand for functions in ES 2015. Usually, when you write a function, it probably looks like this. And if you never want to write the word function again, and I usually don't, you don't have to. It's just parentheses and a fat arrow, which is maybe stolen from CoffeeScript, and a return statement. And even more than that, if you don't want to write return, drop the curly braces, and it's that simple. Which means mapping functions become very clear. You can map over an array, add one to everything in one line. Well, one line. I tried to make this big so everybody could read it, but it's typically one line. Another thing that fat arrow functions get you, and this bites a lot of people before fat arrow functions, is this binding. So this in a fat arrow function is actually what this is outside of that function. I don't know if you've done like a jQuery handler before and you're in a class or some kind of thing that has this and you try to access this, but this isn't what you expected it to be. Well, now it's going to be what you expect it to be more than likely. It's going to be this.num in this case. It's shorthand for what you've seen before. If you've tried to avoid this, maybe you've assigned this to self and you've said self.num. Or you've done, which was new in ES5, bind this, which just takes the out of this and pushes it into that function. So another thing that functions have that's really cool are default parameters, which helps you kind of not worry about undefined anymore. I've seen horror stories with undefined. It looks a little like this. I have an add function. If B is not provided, B is 1. So you're never going to worry about B being undefined. Helps a lot more when you're peeling off of objects. So sometimes people won't pass an object to this guy, and you'll try to call .age, and you'll get a runtime error. They'll say, it's not undefined, it's not a function. Cannot read property of undefined. Chrome's got a little bit better about this, saying cannot read property of age object, which is undefined, something like that. But this is a good way to just kind of specify, hey, don't die. If you return undefined from that, that's cool, but just give me a default. After this, we have objects in ES 2015. They look a little bit different. They're mostly the same, but there's a new shorthand. You're going to see a lot of brevity in this. ES 2015 gets rid of a lot of code that people were kind of doing anyways, but just kind of forces it into standards. So you've probably written an object like this before. You reuse a variable name. It's a key. It's kind of redundant. You can cut it down to this, which is pretty cool. I could probably fit this on one line in my own code. But basically, if the key is the same as the variable name, then you can just drop the key, and it's inferred that that is the key in the variable name. It looks a lot cleaner too. It's just nice. Up next, computed properties. What do I mean when I say computed property? Well, before, when you set a variable on an object, you had to do it after the declaration. It looked a little bit like this. Say you wanted to add an age field that it could have been like young or old or something like that. It's just a dynamic property that you didn't really know at the runtime, but you're passing it in. Well, now, just cram it in the object. Now, if this doesn't make sense to you, basically, we're creating an object with name. We're saying whatever age field is, that's the key, and then the value is 11. It's just kind of shortening up your code. Up next, my favorite thing in ES 2015. It has dramatically reduced the amount of code. I love it. I want you all to use it. If you don't use anything from ES 2015, use destructuring. It's so awesome. So, if you're like me, you've written this code a million times. You have to peel fields off an object. You got a person coming on, and you want their name, you want their age, and you want to do something with the name and the age. Well, with destructuring, you can do that at declaration time. This works with objects and arrays. Basically, you're declaring, you start curly braces, and then the variables that you want off of that, the variable on the right-hand side, and then you get those as new variables. And so it looks like this for arrays. The index of the array, instead of doing let person 1 equals people 0, let person 2 equals people 1, voiding that off by one error that people always seem to run into, you can just do it at the variable declaration time, which is pretty cool. Shortens your code up a lot. Say you don't want person 1, just drop it, keep the comma. Now you have person 2. You don't have to waste a variable declaration at a time. It's pretty cool. You can do this in functions also, which is really cool. You always have like handler functions for events and stuff like that in JavaScript, and you're going to peel it off somewhere. You may as well do it in the function declaration. So what this is saying is, for this function, it takes an object, and it's going to peel name and age off the object, and then go do something with that. It works with default parameters, as you would expect. So before, how we kind of set a variable in the function parameters to something, now it's just off of the object that's in there. All right, up next is a little bit tough to talk about, but just bear with me right now. Rest and spread. It works really well with destructuring, and I think you're going to like it. Up first, let's talk about rest. Basically, you want to gather everything that's been passed to something into one array. What this looks like is this. So, in my example, I have an add function. It can take any number of arguments. I don't have to specify however many arguments up there. You could do this before with old JavaScript with some array prototype slice arguments crap that you really don't want to do. So basically, at the top, you have args. It gathers everything up, and then you can just do whatever you need to do with it, and it just works with the triple dots in front. It works with destructuring also, which is super helpful. In this case, I have people array. I peel off person 1, and then every other person in the array just jammed into other people. It's pretty cool. Rest's partner in crime is spread, which looks identical to rest, but it's different, and and is based on how you use it. So, when I mean this, before in rest, it would gather every argument and jam into an array. Well, spread takes the array and splits it out into several different arguments. So in our case, we have Bob and Jane in an array together, and we want to hug Bob and Jane. So we pass them in with the spread operator, and then it splits it across all the arguments for the function. And then we hug them somehow through code.
Which one is the spread operator?
The spread operator is this guy right here, the triple dots.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So again, it looks just like the rest operator. It just depends on how you use it. So it's really cool for getting arrays together. Instead of just doing cool.concat uncool, you can just do triple dots on either side. So if I wanted to just add another thing to an array and make a new array, I can just use the spread operator to spread these out over an array. when you combine these things, you can do some amazing stuff. So this is going to look a little bit weird, so just bear with me. I have a logging function, and I want to, with this logging function, wrap a function that you pass in, and then every time it's called, log the arguments, and then call that function with the arguments that were passed. So in our case, we take the function, then we turn the new function, which has the rest operator at the top, and then spreads it across the function that you originally passed. If that doesn't make sense, you just got to work with it a little bit more. Again, rest and spread look identical in this case, but it's really cool. I like to kind of mutate my functions at runtime, so it's fun to do things like this. Up next, kind of some nice sugar on the prototypal pattern in JavaScript. I don't really like classes, but some of you may, so I'm going to tell you about them anyway. You may have written code like this before. You make a dog, you add wolf to the prototype, and you call wolf on the dog. This is the way people kind of wrote what would normally be like a class in Java or something like that, but not really. It's just, you see in JavaScript, I don't write my JavaScript this way. I'm disappointed to have to tell you this, but it's an important feature that people should know about. Again, I'm big on functional programming, so classical programming is just dangerous to me. It looks kind of weird. But it looks like this in ES 2015. You've probably seen something similar in another language. You have a constructor, you set something to this, and then you have another function on it. Under the covers, this desugars down to the same thing you saw on the last side with the prototypes. Wolf's on the prototype. You can also do inheritance with it. So if I have an animal that has a speak, I can call super in my constructor, get the old constructor, and then speak, and it calls speak on the animal. I mean, this is nothing new if you've worked in any other language that's OOP. I would recommend when you write classes not to do inheritance more than once, because it leads to a very dangerous code base to change things. If you're extending animal and then you extend dog with furry dog or something, if you change something in animal, who knows what's going to break. So just be very, very careful when you're using classes. Up next, a awesome feature in ES 2015, templates. I mean, you're going to use this if you use ES 2015. It's just a new way to do string concatenation. You've probably done it this way before. Sorry about the quotes, Keynote's very weird. But basically, you're taking a string, you want to display some data on the page, you want to add a number to it and say there are 10 items in your cart. We've all done this. I mean, if you've written any kind of client-side code, you've added strings together. There are other ways to do it that people have gotten around to avoid the spacing problem. Like some people forget spaces after the first string before they add the second one. This is the way I used to write it to get around. It's okay, but there's a much better way to do it in ES 2015. Templates. So to break this down, it looks like a string, but instead of single quotes or double quotes, use a backtick. And then if you want to interpolate any value, use $ curly brace and then close it with a curly brace. And you can do anything in that items thing right there. If I wanted to add items together, I could do it within the curly brace. As long as it evaluates to a JavaScript expression, you can do it. So if you write anything in JavaScript, you'll love this. It's awesome. Up next, modules. Modules are a great way to split your code up when you're writing JavaScript. When I say that, I mean avoiding globals and accessing something in another file, and then if you don't put it on Windows, someone's like, where'd this come from? Well, modules kind of solve that problem. If you're using Node, you've probably used modules before. This is nothing new. Another way to use it in your client-side code is Browserify or Webpack. I use Webpack. Browserify is cool too. It looks like this in ES5. Well, actually just Node or any of those things. They just give you a require statement that says, anything that's exported from animals, give it to me. And then you can use that code. And then module to export says, anyone who wants something from this module, you can have this, and you can import it using the same require statement. You can make this a little bit shorter with destructuring, which is nice, but there's a better way. Well, not better, it's just different. Import and export. It's kind of a way that instead of assigning something at the end, you just import. If I wanted to import animals from animals, I could do that too. I just kind of, destructuring is kind of built into import statements, and then exports, you just give it whatever you want. Two things you can do with modules are renaming your imports. So if I wanted to just import animals from animals, I can name it anything I want. It doesn't really matter. But if I want to peel things off of the animals, I can say as, I can say dog as D, I can say dog as cat and cat as dog, and really screw with other developers. Other things you can do at the end, if you don't want to export each individual item, you can just export a default item, and then anybody who imports something from this will get that as the default. So they'll get Fido and Dry. I think I have 2 slides of the exact same thing. All right. So that's everything that I use in ES 2015. Just to go over again, let and const. New ways to declare your variables, they're great, use them. Functions, they're shorter now, easier to read. You don't have to write that 9-character long thing anymore. Objects, nice and short. Destructuring, peel off variables from your code. Rest and spread, they're brothers, they look the same. They're different depending on their context, but they're just kind of a cool way to gather things together or split them apart. Don't use classes. Templates, you can build strings together and you'll do it. Trust me. Modules, please write your JavaScript code in modules. Don't put things on globals. It really sucks. So that's just a few of my favorite things in ES6. If you want to check them all out, I recommend this article. It breaks them down piece by piece. I can give you a second to look at that. It's very, very big. There's a lot more than what I've talked about here, but these are the things I use in my code every day. Generators is one of those things, but they're kind of weird for me. I don't really understand them, so I don't push people towards them. They're not available in most browsers today. Some browsers implement them. I think Microsoft is actually the browser with the best ES 2015 support, which is weird. But if you want to check out if you can use something, you can do that. But if you're like me and you're impatient and you don't want to wait 10 years till everybody's using Edge, then you want to use something called a transpiler. So transpiler, isn't that like a compiler? Kind of. Transpiler takes your code in one format and then exports it into another format. So what I mean by that is I can write ES 2015 code today, run it through a transpiler, and then it gets spit out into code that'll run in any browser. Maybe even IE6, but probably not. My favorite transpiler that I use today is Babel. Babel's great. It has a plugin system, which means that you can use features from ES 2016 or something that some guy came up with on a weekend and said, this is a new way to write code. Someone's probably written a Babel plugin for it. I wouldn't recommend you do that in production unless you're really brave. We're really brave at Boomtown. So there's one feature that's been proposed for ES 2016 that's in one of the later stages that I really like, and I use it everywhere in my code. Remember rest and spread earlier, the tricky guys? Well, you can do that with objects in this proposed feature, which is awesome. Basically, I want to gather a couple keys off an object and then everything else tuck it into another object. Sorry for the React JSX code here. You just have to bear with me. This is just an example from my code base that I've used. In this case, I want to build an icon, take the class name they gave me, the icon they gave me, and then anything else they wanted to put on there, like style, just throw in an object. Here's the icon. Do whatever you want with it. I don't need to care about it in my code. You can just pass it along. It works for kind of copying objects. If you've ever wanted to create a new object that has the exact same values but is a different reference to say it's different, you can spread it across an object. So you're taking an object here, you're spreading it out, you're getting a new object. If you wanted to add new keys to this object, you could do ... object, comma, another key value for it. So that's everything I wanted to talk to you today about ES 2015. Thank you for letting me talk about it. I hope I didn't move too fast, and I'll answer questions at the panel later.
Yeah, well, we could take some questions now.
Oh, sure. All right, anything? All right, I will go from front to back. What's up?
So applying the spread to objects, does that copy its values only, or like value types, or is it copying also the functionality of the objects? Say if you have functions defined on it.
It will copy anything that's at the base and not the prototype.
Okay.
So you get a shallow copy of it. It's not going to go like deep copying if something's an object on top of that and copy that entire object. It's just going to copy a reference to that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's just the base level things of the
so
object.
it's a reference copy. It's not.
It's a reference copy for the keys and the values,
Yeah.
but you are getting a new object.
Okay.
If you wanted to change like a small thing on an object and then create a copy, or create a copy and then change like a value type on it, then it would be different on either object.
Okay.
But it can get tricky if you get nested into the deeper objects.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How many versions of JavaScript are in the wild now?
How many versions of JavaScript? I don't think anything uses ES3 anymore. There's 5. I mean, when you say how many versions, it's problematic because no two browsers are the same in the amount of features that they implement. So I would say that Edge is probably the best ES 2015 browser, but Chrome is maybe like ES 2015.5, Firefox 0.4. I don't know. It's
Writing
just
code today, you expect it to work with the previous version.
well, that's what the transpiler kind of does. I wouldn't write ES 2015 code and just push it into any browser today. I would always run it through a transpiler like Babel or Tracer, I think is Google's one. Anything? Oh, hey.
How long have y'all been using ES 2015 at Boomtown, and how did you kind of roll it out?
So we started using, Babel's actually only about a year and a month old, but we actually started using it about maybe 9 months ago. It started by, we were writing React code and we were using JSX, which is those funky angle bracket things you saw. And there was rumblings that, hey, Babel actually does this too. They'll compile your JSX to normal JavaScript. And then we saw, oh, it actually does ES 2015 features too. So a lot of our legacy code is still ES5. We don't run that through Babel. But anything new today goes through Babel and goes from ES 2015 to ES5. And we're actually adopting that across the company. Well, we have some guys writing CoffeeScript, but whatever. But yeah, other teams are starting to pick up ES 2015. It's been great. It's kind of taken our code that used to look like this and makes it like this, and with the same functionality, which is really awesome. Less lines of code, fewer bugs. Yeah.
If you do, I don't know if you do much Node or if it's mostly React front-end stuff, but if you do a lot of Node, and Node 4.0 now does have some ES6 support in it, have you run into any problems of where maybe the functionality isn't quite on parity with Babel on the front end and Node support on the back end?
So our Node guys use CoffeeScript,
Okay.
and I've been meaning to talk to them about that. The cool thing about Babel is it works, well, the next version is going to run off a plugin system. So if you know something's supported in Node 4, you don't have to use that transform, so you can use that solidified feature. I haven't run into any problems like writing my own Node code from ES 2015. If you use npm scripts to run things, you could just say npm run start is, hey, call Babel node on this, and that'll run Node on it after it's transformed the code.
So you run Babel through all of your Node, even your Node stuff at this point.
Mhm.
Okay.
Anyone else?
All right, thanks, Mark.
Yep.